How do you define good nutrition?
Join Dr. Gerald Thompson, physician, specialist, and notable environmental conservationist, every Wednesday, 8 to 9 p.m. here on WeFM 99.9. Your health matters. Ask Dr. Thompson any burning question you have related to health. Your health matters. Dr. Thompson will examine healthcare, highlight important environmental issues, and look at what's hot in science and technology and the next wave of emerging diseases and health trends. So this and every Wednesday, join us 8 to 9 p.m. here in BFM 99.9 because your health matters.
People's Pharmacy, for all your pharmaceutical, skin and body care needs. Located on Grenville Street in Kingstown. They open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday. Call them today at 784-456-1170. People's Pharmacy also stock vitamins and supplements, personal care items, toiletries, children and adult pampers, and much, much more. And of course, get your prescriptions filled by a friendly and professional pharmacist. People's Pharmacy. Come in today and let us serve you.
And good evening. Good evening to you. This is Your Health Matters. And I'm very pleased to be with you this evening, Wednesday, 8 p.m. And I want to send out a warm welcome to all those persons listening wherever in the world you are. This has been a wonderful day in St. Vincent the Grenadines. I think the soft opening of Sandals. And there's a National Guides camp taking place out at the Prospect Mangrove. Be there for about 8 days. They're going to really enjoy and have something of a journey into nature. But this evening, for a number of weeks, about a month now, I've been trying to raise the issue and talk about mental illness. But in particular, I want to focus in terms of mental illness in men. And let me start off with a few things. In 2016, at the time that the world and United Nations was becoming engaged in the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030 goals, it was apparent that besides the environment, besides gender issues, besides matters of other health and poverty and things of that nature, that mental illness was one of those areas. Matter of fact, improving health was number 3 in the Sustainable Development Goals. And there was a particular list of issues on health. Mental illness was one of them. Now, how important is mental illness? I don't think we realize how important mental illness is. But going back in 2016, there was a special session held again at the United Nations. And this session was called UNGASS, UNGASS. It was a General Assembly special session. That's why they call it UNGASS. And this was 2016. And they brought out some very important things. They brought out that, in general, mental illness is not being dealt with properly by various countries. And that, one, we are supposed to have a much more of a human rights approach when it comes to mental illness. I tell you, for many years, you know somebody who you hear is on cocaine and you call them a cocaine jumbie, or you call this person a crackhead. And we've learned to scorn and to have what we call disdain and consider these people as despicable. We don't want them around us. Well, to some extent, one could understand why, because you don't know, these people may be unpredictable and so. But the truth is that mental illness, for a number of persons to emerge, to get out of their state of mental illness, they are going to require not only treatment, but they're going to also require a lot of additional support so that whatever treatment they're receiving can work effectively. Now, I'm one who always believe also prevention is much more important and much better than cure. And for somebody to have mental illness, it's better that that mental illness was prevented. And to an extent, mental illness can be prevented, especially if you've had an episode of mental illness before and you want to see how you can avoid and prevent it happening again. Or if there might be mental illness that has ever ran in your family, truthfully, there can be a higher incident of and a higher risk of you developing it since you have a family history of it. But I've also, said there's a peculiar thing about man. I'm not talking about the women. They have a lot of issues too. But men have a tendency of masking a lot of the problems they have until it's too late. But let me just dig into a little bit of what are the main mental illnesses. And in terms of how common they are, let's start with depression. And as you know, depression is characterized by a persistent low mood that interferes with the way in which you function, a low mood. Can you imagine that? A low mood. We could get into some detail. The second type of mental illness is anxiety disorders. There are a number of them, right? And anxiety disorders are characterized by intense and uncontrollable feeling of fear and worry and some fright, some tenseness. Have any of you experienced that? That anxiety, the different forms of anxiety, And then there is something you've heard me talk about, schizophrenia. Depression is not schizophrenia. Anxiety is not schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is where, in terms of the mind, the person is not able to perceive their environment properly. They may start hearing voices. They may also see things, but usually they have what's called delusions. Somebody says something to them or doesn't say something to them. They come up with, not conspiracy theories, but they start thinking all kind of different things that are not the case. They can be delusions. They can have delusions of who they are. They start thinking, I am Napoleon. I'm an emperor, I'm a king. Or they could think that they're an animal or something so. And that is schizophrenia for you, with delusions. But there's another type of special anxiety called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, most people would think PTSD will occur if somebody was near, let's say, a bomb going off, or they were in an army or in a defense force and a bomb went off somewhere. Yes, that has caused a lot of PTSD. soldiers who went into war, into Vietnam. I'm sure in Ukraine and in different parts in Gaza, a lot of people are suffering from PTSD. Kids can suffer from PTSD. A bomb, your building being blown up by a bomb sent off by somebody. They say the Israelis, and so, boy, that leaves a lasting effect. But you know, in terms of PTSD, it happens in a lot of other people too. Someone who's just lost a leg, had their leg cut off, that causes a lot of PTSD. Someone who was raped, a woman or a man who was raped, that can cause PTSD. Somebody who was just knocked down by a car and they recovered, they can't have the PTSD. Your memory, your short-term memory, keeps happening back to those dreaded episodes. So you could be asleep, you wake up, or during the day, you see something that reminds you of that dreaded episode. Let's say if a woman was raped, things that could trigger her if they see the person again, or they see somebody looking like the person, or something similar, you know, like in terms of the cologne the person had on, or certain clothes the person had on. These things could trigger someone with PTSD from what has taken place before. And then there's also substance abuse. And when I have the biggest substance abuse is alcohol. And I don't think a lot of people know how much alcohol. Kamal, you know how much alcohol? This carnival, how many songs are going to be produced about rum? And how much songs are you going to produce? Okay. Kamal says none. You know, but boy, mental health is a big issue. It's also marijuana, but it's also now crack cocaine, right? Now, this is what I want to put out today, that men often, because of the society they live in, they are not readily able to have their mental illness properly diagnosed. It's ignored for a long time because everybody wants to be macho. And so we deny that there is something taking place. If it's a young person, mothers will deny that there's anything wrong with their son. Although after a period of time, boy, after they've start doing things, smashing things up, and so they're ready, let's call someone in. But mental illness in men, especially young, marginalized males, young, I say black, marginalized males, is a growing problem, and we are going to have to really take care of it. You know, other question, what causes mental illness in men? Well, I tell you, there are multiple factors. Several things can trigger mental illness in men, including, let's say, a separation from a loved one, from a wife or girlfriend. You know, or let's say if somebody got B-U-T-T, somebody got boot. You understand? And I got to say that way. You know, how about divorce? I tell you, women seemingly outwardly go through a lot more visible tension than females, but men actually go through quite a lot too, maybe even more intensely, right? It's a serious shake-up in life. And the same thing, a breakup in other relationships. Financial stress is a big issue. How much people really develop mental illness, get depressed because of financial illness, especially and I say financial stress, I say not financial illness, but financial stress. If you lost money, if somebody took money from you, if you lent somebody money and they're not giving you back, you know, if somebody ripped you off and you can't say who ripped you off because people would think that you're stupid, you're foolish, you know, there's a lot of scams out there, a lot of hoax out there, and a number of people fall for these things. And you have to be careful, because if it can lead to mental illness, depression, when it really comes to. It could be problems in the workplace, on the job, stress on the job. Somebody don't like you, you don't like somebody. The boss don't like you, you know, all sorts of things. And you know, the type of work you do, not having productive work in the sense, this could trigger certain people off who really are prone to problems if they don't have it. One big cause is isolation. Could you imagine? I don't have an exam in it in terms of people who go to prison and are in isolation, what happens to them, and whether any studies that show that they too develop illness. But for sure, isolation, being on your own, is a big problem. You know, but men also go through certain problems on becoming a father. I suppose there should supposed to be joy. There's supposed to be rejoicing on marriage. But some men are a little skeptical sometimes of whether the baby is actually theirs, you know, and these things could lead to a lot of stress, a lot of tension. So I just brought up some of the reasons that you know, it takes place. And let's take a break and we come back to this kind of situation.
People's Pharmacy, for all your pharmaceutical, skin and body care needs. Located on Grenville Street in Kingstown. They open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday. Call them today at 784-456-1170. People's Pharmacy also stock vitamins and supplements, personal care items, toiletries, children and adult pampers, and much, much more. And of course, get your prescriptions filled by a friendly and professional pharmacist. People's Pharmacy. Come in today and let us serve you.
You know, if you are worried about your mate, your husband, your boyfriend, your man, or your son having some sort of mental illness, there's some advice that can be given. Firstly, that, as I said, there's been a change. When I first started practicing medicine, policemen could have gone and picked up people and carried them in if there's a thought of a mental illness. Then, because somebody mentalist usually doesn't want to go to the doctor, there became this concept of two physicians, two PC. Two physicians could sign that you should either be admitted or go to the emergency room or be evaluated. Today, because again of human rights, a lot of people don't get the right access to care, to treatment. I want to start off with the first and most important thing. If you have a family member who you suspect or starting to show signs of mental illness, the thing is that not to give up on the individual. You have to stay connected with the individual. You got to stay connected, touching base, right? And it is important to establish and firm up the relationship with somebody who's going through any kind of mental illness. And it is important too that there is a referral Now, it is said here in St. Vincent we don't have a psychiatrist. Yeah, we do have a psychiatrist. They may have been private practice, or they may be working in a different field, but the role of the psychiatrist employed by the government is to deal with people who are in the prison who have committed crime. They have to be evaluated. Why did they do it? Why did they shoot? Why did they chop somebody? And so they have to evaluate that, especially if the person died. And going to court, and so it's tough on some doctors. You just sit down in the office, you have to go to court, and people are pressing you, and what's your diagnosis, and so and sometimes you don't really have one. But the thing is, we have to make sure that access to mental health care is there. And we know that there's a mental hospital, and many people, there's stigma associated with it. People don't want to go there. And then there's the outpatient. So there's a lot of psychologists in St. Vincent. I've mentioned to you there is a psychiatrist in private practice. And you could take your loved one, your mate, your son, or whatever, to go and see these individuals to be properly checked out. If you do not, depending on the type of mental illness, it can become chronic. It can become severe. When mental illness becomes severe, oh boy, it's usually very, very tough. I've known of many instances in, please say, the United States, where there's a member of family who has a mental illness and is having problems. They're what we call relapsing. They're getting sick again on the mental illness. So the person calls the police, and the police come with guns drawn, and the person who called the police, their loved one with mental illness, says something or moves the wrong way or does something and is shot dead. How many times have we heard things like that? And then the family member said, oh, I called the police to see if you could talk to my son. I didn't expect you to kill him. Well, this is so much the way of the world. Is there a question?
Yeah, there's a question here. Yeah, there's a question here.
Yes. Well, let's take this question. Good night, Doc. I was the individual who asks about what causes someone when they finish eating and they cough and drink. Yeah. Thank you. I found a solution. That was my problem. I am eating too fast, and I was going through, and what I was going through that for a long period of time. So I'm taking my time now to eat things and eat it slowly, and it is going okay. So blessing. Well, thank you very much for that feedback. I remember that question well. I don't know if other listeners remember that question. But I could imagine when someone is ill and the stress that they go through. And we're talking about men. Women, they go to the doctor so readily, so easily. The average male who may have a problem, whether the problem is with mental health or with their stomach or with their sugar or with their pressure or with their toes or heel, they have a tendency not to want to go to the doctor. I never understood, why do men hate doctors so? Why do men hate people like me, right? I am not so bad, you know what I mean? Come on. But men hate doctors, and any excuse to stay away, they'll jump on it. But women have a tendency of being able to pick up their problems much earlier, whether it's a mental problem, a physical problem, a diabetic hyper. Women, and maybe it's because women over the years have had monthlies and 9 monthlies. Let me put it this way: they may have had period issues, and they may have had carrying a child in terms of 9 monthlies. And so they see a doctor intensely, and they rely on the doctor, you know, for advice. Men don't have periods. They don't make babies in terms of carrying the baby to term. They make the baby on one night. As such. And the truth is that they have not engaged with doctors to find a doctor and stick with a doctor and see that doctor fairly regularly, at least one checkup a year. I'm not talking about going for 3, 4, 5 years without seeing a doctor. That is terrible. Terrible. See the doctor at least once every year. And that goes a long way. The advice you to get to the doctor. I know some doctors are going to be quick in the office and out the office, but you're rarely able to ask succinct questions, important questions. Maybe they might have a staff there, an assistant or something like that will also answer questions to you. But all these things are going to be very, very, very important, critical. Now, for mental illness, besides going to see your doctor, there may be some need to change your lifestyle. If your mental illness is due to substance abuse like alcohol or drugs or cannabis or whatever, then you have to change that. You have to change that. I know it's tough, but you have to change that. And on the other hand, if there are some of these other type of illness, depression, there are certain doctors and clinicians in terms of psychologists that you could go and see. Most of the time, we don't think you should start with medication. It's more about talking about your problem. I don't think people really realize there's so much bottled up inside them. And this is so true for men. Women, I've said, have that access to go and talk to their doctor or talk to their girlfriends. But you know what? Men neither talk to their doctor or talk to their good friends. They fear that there will be a change in the perception associated with that. So if somebody were to talk about go to a shop and start to talk, boy, you know, this is what's happening to me and so forth, men don't do that. Men don't do that. But women in their small groups, they do that, depending on the level of trust. We gotta start getting men talking, because that will go and help in such a way. Talking also allows you to practice putting over your problem in a manner that people will understand, a doctor will understand. And in that way, they could better advise therapy and treatment and so forth. But if the way in which these things are done is haphazard, it's a problem. I believe there are still a fair amount of services available in civil security. People say there's none. I don't know, like in the case of alcohol, if there's an Alcoholic Anonymous coming, you know? But it's really hard getting people into these things. But it's important. Now, I want to say, about 10 years ago, I had my last journey to India. I went to India, and I was quite shook up when I started reading about men who commit suicide. And I was alarmed by, in these countries, massive countries, India's 1.4 billion. It's expected that within another couple of years, India, the population of India will outstrip that of China. But what's peculiar, India has a lot of farmers. Do you know the amount of people, if they feel they're unable to feed the family, if they feel they're unable to make it in life and contribute to what the family is doing, some people, I was shocked to hear in India, chose to take their lives. Now, I shouldn't even bring that up as a suggestion, but there's no need for that. There's no need for that. No matter how depressed you are, no matter how much financial stress you are, no matter how much, just feeling of ill will you have. But I know that some men, that share responsibility of wanting to care for their family, feeling there's not enough money to do it, it could stress people out, really stress people out. And I think as a society, we have to understand that. We have to understand that. I think in some parts of the world, we like to put each other down. That's what I want to say, We have to build people up. We got to not build people up so they can fall down, but build people up so they can stand up and be counted. And I'm really hoping that everyone in the listening to my voice, that you may know someone, you may know somebody who's going through a form of mental illness right now, whether they've had it for a long time, whether they're under stress, whether they've been forced to do something, whether their life is going really upside down. Maybe they have a medical illness and it's really affecting them and everything else. I think it's critical that you do see somebody. You do see, especially a psychologist, a number of them about. I'm not going to mention any names, but even in the phone book, you'll find them. And these individuals, they do many different types of things, but somebody to talk to you for your deeper fears and your feelings to really come out. And it comes out to a trusted person, a person who you feel isn't going to have it on the streets. That's important. But I really asking that if you are a wife and your husband seems to be going through some stress, stand up like a crutch and give him that support, and encourage him also to go and see one of the type of doctors. in addition, any type of illness in terms of men, not just mental illness, there really has to be an understanding within the family. And besides the immediate family, there's another circle of individuals. Does the individual have a brother, sister? You know, do they have close cousins that they relate to? What of the job, the workplace? Is the person still studying, or is it academics? They're learning something. All these things come into play. But for sure, mental illness is not an easy illness to treat, and there are some good medications that are antidepressants. They are anti-depression. And there's some medication that are anti-anxiety. There are other things that help relieve PTSD. But it's going to be critical that people seek some form of treatment. Come on, I want to ask you something. How do you think Vincentians look at people with mental illness, any illness? How do they look at somebody? And what do you think has been the general response?
I think that we look at them as crazy. I think that there needs to be more sensitization as regards to mental illness. I think we, because I think we kind of more downplay. And like today I was in court and it was mentioned about the prisoners as in terms of their mental health. And, you know, there was a big chuckle, a big, you know, it was kind of funny.
Yeah,
you know, so it's not taken as seriously as I think that it should.
Yes. But I remember hearing the superintendent of prison talking about there may be 30-something or 40-something people actually in prison with mental illness. And, you know, there's a need for some protocol in terms of how to deal with it. Well, many people may look at mental illness as one disease, and I've tried to point out there are many, many, many different types of mental illness. And you can't use one treatment for schizophrenia to treat a different type of condition. Some will work that way, but it may actually exacerbate it and make it worse. So seeing the doctor and having them help choose exactly what, you know, what the problem is, it's going to be very, very helpful.
But I don't think, and I think there should be like programs to sensitize. I think maybe more programs, because I mean, I don't know of any.
Yeah.
Right. But I think there should be more programs to sensitize people as regards to mental illness. Mm-hmm. I mean, tonight we're having one.
Yeah.
I would want to believe that there are a lot of people just listening.
Yeah.
You know, because as opposed to, you know, calling and probably train you off tangent because they just want to know more about this. Yes. And I think, and I don't want to say that sometimes when the way people respond, can we really blame them? I think their response is out of ignorance, in the sense that they just don't know. All we just say is that, oh, he crazy. You know, and that's how we respond, not realizing that, you know, it is that serious. And, you know,
I'll tell you, the work that's to be done in St. Vincent on developing diabetic and hypertensive associations. People are able to walk around proud, I am diabetic. I got pressure. Now, unfortunately, somebody is not going to walk around and say, I have mental illness, I have a mental this because of this there. And this is part of the stigma that kind of comes along with it. I think that can be broken down. I think that can be, because persons who have, as I said, the males in particular who have mental illness are going to ignore the symptoms, are going to ignore the warning signs that something is taking place, and they will go deeper and deeper into their mental illness, into their depression, into their disorder.
I have a question. Is the prevalence of mental illness, do we see the ratio as in terms of man to woman? Is it more common in men or more common in women?
Mental illness, like anxiety as a mental illness, is significantly higher in women than in men. Anxiety. Now, PTSD seems to be more common in men because they take on activities and get into certain activities that can lead to violent issues, and so that require them to get a new device. But I still want to say that there are a lot of men and women who have illnesses, but their condition is going to be recurrent because the mental illness is being caused by something that has affected the brain. Not necessarily an experience. They may have a chemical that is normally moved around the brain to initiate, that may be deficient. Just like insulin is deficient for diabetes, the situation may have where in their brain it's not functioning as well.
Are there any early warning signs, right, before, let's say, before things get out of hand, that people, family members,
yes,
can look for, observe about a person?
Yes, you know, and this is focus a lot on men again, because we're trying to encourage women, wives, girlfriends, mothers, to see how they could bring some greater attention. But anger is one of the common symptoms. Anger. And there's irritability. Irritable. People are irritable. And there's a kind of aggressiveness. And so, now this may be true of certain type of illnesses. It may not be true for like depression, but for anxiety disorders, PTSD, you know, those are the things. Anger, any irritability is always very good. Then for people, you have to watch for very noticeable changes in mood, where somebody is sad one moment, another moment they're bubbly and this, that, and so forth. Again, you may have to think substance use because of that, but if not, then this definitely is something that can be a problem. People have difficulty sleeping is an important one, or difficult concentrating, a feeling of restlessness. Now, I'm listing all these different symptoms. Some of them are very, very, very peculiar to a certain type of mental illness. But I'm talking generally the symptom of mental, without going through all different mental illness and seeing the early warning signs for them. So mental illness is not one disease or one illness in which all the early warning signs I could rattle off in 3-4 sentences. No, each mental illness is a complex issue in itself. And the assist the one can get is could possibly go a long way, you know. We have to look seriously also at alcohol. I've mentioned it a couple of times, but someone has to really stand up and be counted. We've shown, you know, in these last few years, in America in 1920, they banned alcohol, prohibition. What then happened? And an underground economy started up. That's where you had Buster Keaton and Al Capone and all these people. They emerged. Police were bribed and so forth. There was a mess. So it started in 1920. By 1933, they had to abandon the banning of alcohol. They say, let's put it on the license here. So I'm ending by saying that we know you can't ban stuff. Experience has told us you should never try to do it that way. It will go underground and it'll get worse. Mm-hmm. But we need to speak to individuals. And individuals who've gone through this before, we need your voluntary service. We need it because we got to reach people. We got to reach people to tell them a little bit more about the issue with the mental illness. So with that, I think we've come to the end of the show. I've got to say, mental illness is a serious, serious thing. And we have to, in terms of human rights, we have to reach out to somebody so that they could receive the help that they need and they deserve. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bid you a very special good evening and good night.
People's Pharmacy, for all your pharmaceutical, skin and body care needs. Located on Grenville Street in